Good morning. Welcome to the Be Better Off Show.
The Be Better Off Show.
I always say, have a great day. Well, welcome to our listeners to the Be Better Off Show, where we try to get leading Australians from all walks of life to share their life lessons to help us to be healthier, wealthier, and wiser. And today, we're extremely privileged to have Andrew Gregory, the Australian CEO of McDonald's Australia, here to share his story and the things that he's learned on what's been an amazing journey. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, Brett. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Mate, thanks so much for joining us. I'd love to start at the beginning, which is always a good place to start. Where were you born and where did you grow up? And, you know, siblings and sort of educational background, your mum and dad. How did all that start for you?
Yeah, terrific. So I was born in Melbourne. My mum and dad, actually Queenslanders originally, which I'm proud of, and every Victorian is a part Queenslander, as you know. But I think had a really great family life early on. Grew up in Melbourne, as I said. I was lucky enough, Dad worked for BP, British Petroleum, and we lived and worked in Asia. Well, he worked. I lived in Asia, Indonesia for a few years, Singapore for another few years, and also later on in my work career, I was lucky enough to live in Japan for a couple of years as well. So yeah, growing up was great experiences. Loved living abroad. Ended up finishing school back in Melbourne, and then went to Monash University and did a economics degree there. And mum and dad were actually still overseas, so I was lucky enough. I lived with my brother for year 12 as I finished school. HSC certificates weren't as portable or as interpretable as what they are today, and so we decided that I would come back to school, finish year 12 in the Australian system to sort of make sure that the university entrance was relevant to the relevant year 12 degree as well, or the finished certificate.
Terrific. So you go to Monash and then straight out of university, how do you come to end up at McDonald's?
No, so actually I was just at uni, and obviously I had normal part-time jobs, like I was babysitting and other things around the place, but there was literally a local Maccas restaurant was getting built up the road in my first year of uni, and living with my brother in a good way. He encouraged me, as an older brother would, to go and get a job. So I did. We went up. The restaurant was literally under construction. They were doing the interviews for the crew and the positions at the restaurant, and I got a casual position at Maccas, like so many young people in Australia have over the years.
Terrific. So you're studying an economics degree, you're working a part-time job at Maccas. What were your first impressions as a young person interviewing and joining that business?
So I think the level of organisation was like really clear, evident. There was systems in place. They could take any young person, help them, engage them, train them, get them working quickly. But the systems and the strength of the process really was evident, and still is in our business today. I think the other thing which we still talk about, working at Maccas is a great training ground. Obviously, not everyone who works at a Maccas restaurant or a McDonald's restaurant stays for as long as I have. I'm really happy that I have stayed, and I'm really proud of the fact that you can have a career from the restaurant all the way into the head office. A lot of people obviously join our restaurants, get trained, understand those really important life skills around teamwork and customer service and punctuality and discipline around how to work. And all of those things were evident in the restaurant I worked at. I worked for a franchisee. His name was David Bays. He had a great environment, and the real focus on people, and this idea of work at Maccas, earn some money, whilst you're obviously managing other parts of your life, and actually get some mates while you do it, or work with your friends while you learn these important skills. And I think that's really one of the great things we offer to so many young people, is that ability to learn and train and engage in a workplace at a young age. At the same time, it's great fun. It fits within your lifestyle, and you earn a few dollars as you go through.
So it's a really great story in that, many CEOs, you get the impression that they're like a cherry on top of a cake, mildly relevant to the cake. They're not really aware of how the business is built from the ground up. But you've been with the system now, how many years since that first job?
So yeah, more than 24, 25 years. So it's always been a great system to give people a chance to try different things. So I started in the restaurants with my economics degree. My first job in head office was in the finance team, but I've also led teams doing real estate, construction. I've lived and worked in Japan, and I've gone and been the regional manager in Queensland at one stage as well. So it is a business that still continues to value the leadership and experience skills that someone takes. Of course, you need the functional ability to run a team and understand how the business works. But what's more important, and I think we still do a really good job of recognising this, that the leadership skills someone has are very transferable between different functions and different skills. And it's a great career at Maccas because of that. We don't consider you an accountant forever. We don't consider you a lawyer or a marketing expert only. You have the opportunity to try different things, learn, and also obviously add diverse thoughts into those other teams as you move about the business. And I think that's always been, I've always been lucky that Maccas has given me that ability to continue to be in a new position, a difficult new position that's challenged me as I've gone through the last 20 or so years.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So that focus on really great training from the ground up and building genuine leadership skills you've mentioned there, Andrew. What do you guys think leadership is really?
I think it's about who you are as a person, trying to be as authentic as possible as much of the time. And I think one of the, being authentic is a word, but what it means is you bring yourself into the discussion, you bring yourself into the decision, you present yourself as who you are in the system of how we've approached things at McDonald's for a very long time. We've got some basic unwritten agreements around we want to have fun as a business, we want to be successful as a business and grow the business, because that's what gives everyone opportunities, whether it's our franchisees or our suppliers or corporate team. Growing the business is really important, and it's a fundamental part of how we approach things and who we are. But I think it's just this challenge. I often say to people in our corporate team or to restaurant managers when I meet them, one of the things I really value or encourage is that there's nothing wrong to feel nervous when you start a new job. In fact, it's better to feel some level of nervousness, or I'm not sure exactly I'm going to be brilliant at this, because I think when you're in that mindset of not being completely confident and not being 100% clear, I think you're in a learning mindset. I think you're trying to really listen more and really understand things from different perspectives. So, often people I know get concerned about trying a new role or moving across into different teams, but I really think it's a really, and so many different careers that I've observed, both in and outside of McDonald's, have been made better because people have taken risks with their career and moved across into different teams. And I think it's something we try to do at McDonald's, and it's a really important part of someone's career growth.
Yeah, it's great. I think it makes so much sense. So in one of the concepts that you hear a lot of, if you have anything to do with the Maccas system, is this three-legged stool. For our listeners, Andrew, can you share, I've really seen this idea as being, thinking, I think it's become more common today to think about multiple stakeholders and the broader role of the business. But McDonald's has been doing this for 50 years. Can you share with our listeners, what that means? Like, what's this stool business?
Yeah, it's a good one. Good question, Brett. Thanks. We're really proud of the idea of the three-legged stool, and it simply is built around our franchisees, our suppliers, and our corporate team. And it's built around the simple, practical, physical premise of a three-legged stool, that if any one of those three legs gets too long or too short, then the stool effectively destabilizes and falls over. And so a three-legged stool approach, or a system-first approach, is the way we talk about it and the way we describe. And it's really built around long-term relationships. Our franchisees have long-term relationships. Our suppliers, we have very long-term relationships with many of our suppliers, and our company has been around for 50 years as well. And over time, there may be times or periods of your career or your relationship with McDonald's where things move and your stool may shorten slightly or lengthen slightly, or you may be better off over a period of time, but that'll balance itself out. And it's about a win for everybody versus, at any one point, someone being a lot better off. And I think coming to the table with an approach like the three legs of the stool is about how we can all work together to grow the business. Because sometimes we do have competing tensions between those three legs of the stool, but the mindset is the key, that over the long term, if we balance the three-legged stool, it's a stronger business. It's a business that will grow, and it'll provide opportunities for everyone in that three legs of the stool. And I think on the track record or the evidence, Maccas has always given great opportunities for every part of that three-legged stool.
Yeah, it's a great story. Now, I've deliberately not mentioned the numbers. I'll come to the numbers at some point, but just on this, for our listeners, I'm a great fan of Warren Buffett. What I love about Warren is that he's got this long-term mentality. And at Kelly+Partners, I'm consistently saying to people, I want us to be long-term people in a short-term world, because I just believe that anyone that can, has the right values and the right behaviors and the right strategy, consistently prosecuted, ultimately ends up in a better place. But you've mentioned very consistently there, long-term relationship, thinking about the system first, balancing competing interests, but knowing that over time it'll work out. That's all predicated, I guess, on this long-term mindset and, I guess, of building trust. How do you, in a world that's increasingly short-term, how have you as a leader and Maccas as a business sort of held the fort and got people to look further out than their sort of short-term situation?
I think it's a lot. I mean, building trust in our system is a lot about over and over doing what you said you would do. And I think it's about, as people or as the company or as a franchisee or a group of franchisees and as a supplier, the more times you do what you said you've committed to do and you do it well, the more trust that everyone continues to hold and believe in, and it just reinforces the level or the strength of the three-legged stool. And I think building trust is obviously about having relationships. It's about respectful relationships, and it's sometimes, as in any business or any management of stakeholders, it's about being respected versus liked. But I think over a long period of time, that level of respect can really drive a level of affection between the different parts of the system. And we're really proud of our franchisees. We're really proud of our suppliers and really proud of the people in our corporate team that I think have worked through so many different challenges and issues to continue to be a successful business over a long period of time. And it's not an easy thing to do, and it requires a lot of hard work. We've really missed over the last 18 months the ability to be face-to-face across the relationships that we have. And I think it's really reinforced how important those relationships are.
It's so true. We at Kelly+Partners, we have been in a privileged position to work with a number of really fantastic McDonald's franchisees for a long time. And I've seen a couple of things, a few things I'd mention to our audience that Andrew and his team deliver well. They do face-to-face annual conference in Australia, global conference every 2 years on a rotating basis. They get their franchisees together consistently for system meetings. They bring functional teams together across specific parts, marketing, IT, etc., to try and harness the input of the franchisees who are, you know, very highly qualified, intelligent, committed people. But one of the things I pick up is I think is a bedrock to your system, Andrew, is this 20-year franchise agreement. You know, when somebody becomes a franchisee, they sign a 20-year agreement. Now at Kelly+Partners, we've had since day one, all our partners sign 10-year partnership agreements. It's the only organization in the world in our industry that does it. But the whole concept is to get people to think further out than 10 minutes. You know, 10 years, it takes 10 years to do anything constructive. In your business, certainly 20, there's a huge investment in capital equipment. Where did the 20-year agreement come from? And how do you get confident that you want to partner with somebody for 20 years and that they get confident in you?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, 20 years, as you mentioned, a lot of that is built around the level of capital investment that the franchisee needs to make. We're also fortunate over a very long period of time, my predecessors and the people in the team have bought land. As you know, or many people know, McDonald's is a really significant landholder, and about 70 to 80% of the McDonald's restaurants in Australia, we actually own the land. And owning land versus leasing land or leasing property gives you a really significant level of certainty. And so with our franchisees, the 20 years gives them a level of certainty. It gives the banks and the financiers a level of certainty on how they approach lending. I think it also translates into long-term relationships with suppliers that give them a level of certainty around the capital and the investment and the passion that they bring to the business around the quality of food that they produce and provide us. Long-term relationships are really beneficial for all of those things. And even if you think about from our menu offering and our product, we've had products like the Big Mac, the Bacon and Egg McMuffin, our hash browns, our French fries. They don't change much either. And that's really deliberate around the relationship we have with our customers, which obviously is the most important part of it. So we think the long-term relationship allows us to balance the three legs of the stool, give certainty to the system, and I think, again, evidence suggests the growth in the business is really, really a great example of why it works for us in our system. I think you mentioned, how do we make a relationship for 20 years? How do we know whether it's going to work? I think it allows us also to focus on when we approve a new franchisee or select someone to join the system. I think thinking about 20 years really focuses you less on the person's practical ability to do something and more on what that person or what the character of that individual as a potential franchisee is. And I think that's a really important part. Over the course of the 20 years or over the course of our history as a system, many of our franchisees have come in as experts in certain fields. They've been ex-accountants or marketing professionals or school teachers or any number of different professions from outside the system. Over the course of 20 years, those skills become less relevant to their ability to run a successful McDonald's franchisees. And it is about their character, what they want to focus on, and their work effort and ethic around what they want to do to drive their business.
It's I think, a huge distinction. And for any of our listeners, I would urge anyone when they're making a decision, if you can think of it in a 20-year context, it just helps you make much better people decisions, much better relationship decisions, etc. And now today in Australia, I think the stats are that the average mortgage lasts 7.5 years, the average marriage lasts 7 years. If you can get people to think long term, you've got a gigantic advantage. Now, early on, you mentioned, Andrew, something that McDonald's are very famous for, and that's the quality of their systems. And, I think that if you said to most people, what is it that makes McDonald's so successful? I think there is a level of consciousness as to how systemized the business is. I think the long-term thing's less understood, hence my emphasis. But, as a young person, you can take somebody into the business, get them trained and up and operating and contributing very quickly. I believe the quality of the systems in a business speak to the respect that business has for the time and efforts and intelligence of its people, not asking them to do things in a backward, ridiculous way that wastes their time and wastes their life. That's the way I've always sort of driven our community systems here. But for you, as a young guy coming in and now in the system nearly 25 years, how do you think about systems? How do you get your people to understand the value of systems? a lot of people are interested in doing things, but not really writing them down or codifying. How have you built and maintained that culture? Because it is truly extraordinary.
I think the strength of our system, when we lose the connection on exactly how you described it, when we make mistakes, I make mistakes, our team makes mistakes, when we see when the system falls down is when we see the strength of the system. And what I mean by that is it is a really key differentiator for us as a business to be able to, if you think about it, when we make changes in our business, we need to impact 1,000 restaurants, over 100,000 employees in locations right around Australia that are operating 24 hours, 7 days a week in a franchise model. And so we know the importance of our system, whether it's the communication that we use, the way that we write instructions and train our young people in our restaurants, or how we communicate with our franchisees and engage them in the business plan and the formulation of the business plan. All of these things, when they work, are brilliant, and the customer gets a great outcome. When we make mistakes and we upset the balance of that system, and or we try and do too much too quickly, and or we haven't communicated well enough to our restaurants or our franchisees, that's when the system does dislocate for a short amount of time. And that's when we really do, I guess, where our franchisees and us really appreciate the strength of the system. We see it when we don't do it right. And it's a really quick, you can imagine a really quick feedback mechanism back from our franchisees, back from our restaurant managers. And it's something that we often need to adjust really quickly to get it right. But I couldn't be prouder of my team. I couldn't be prouder of the franchisees that sit at the table with us to work on these plans, because when we get it right, it's incredibly rewarding and it's incredibly successful when our business continues to grow.
So it's for our listeners, go and watch the movie The Founder, read the book Grinding It Out, pay particular attention to a lad called Fred Turner. I was privileged to meet Fred many years ago and get a photo with him, have a bit of a chat with him. But he wrote the first ops manual, and he started the first McDonald's training academy. I believe, in the book it's described as a room underground. I think it was a basement with no windows. But McDonald's,
it was part of one of our restaurants in Chicago.
Yeah, so there was this commitment from the beginning to train people. Andrew, how big, as a proportion of revenue or some meaningful way to explain to people, it's a very significant commitment from McDonald's to train its people. How big's that look today, and how's it delivered, and what's the mentality?
I think the number of our employees sort of is the best way. More than over the course of the last 50 years, about 1.4 million Australians have worked at Maccas at any one time in our 50-year history, which is pretty extraordinary for a country of 25, 26 million. And it's one thing we are incredibly proud of, our history of training and recruiting and giving a lot of people their first job. But it's also something we take incredibly seriously from a responsibility point of view. I think Australian people trust Maccas to employ these people, look after them, train them, and help them many of them with their first job. What we do with training is interesting in that we focus the functional and practical skills of training in the restaurant. And then you mentioned briefly before the idea or the physical place that we call the Hamburger University, which is, we have training centres in all of our capital cities around Australia, and our main training centre, the Charlie Bell School of Management or School of Leadership in Thornlea at our main head office in Sydney. The Hamburger University is where our managers train and learn the important leadership skills that they need to run a restaurant. And over the course of 5 or 6 different training programs over the course of several years, they can take the skills that they learn in the restaurant, the practical ability to operate all the different parts of the restaurant. But at the Hamburg University, they learn the leadership, the people skills, and important the important requirements that they need to be able to really lead. Every one of our restaurants has got probably about 130, 140 different employees. And it's an incredible skill and experience that many of our managers get from leading teams of that size, the coordination, the fact that you learn through leading so many people. People bring their life to work.
Their personality, their strengths,
their personalities, their different characters. It's an incredible experience for our young managers. And I know I talk to my colleagues, other CEOs and people in business, the experience on a resume of working at McDonald's, especially at that management level, is still valued incredibly highly. And I know it's because of their experience leading teams, motivating people, communication, all these things that are difficult to learn other than in practice. And I think
Andrew, is there an academic leader of that, or is it staffed by full-time people, trained by people out of the restaurants? What's the structure of the Charlie Bell School of Leadership?
Yeah, so there's a combination of a lot of our ops people are teaching their own experience and skills, and it's one of the important rotations that our leadership operations people have done in their past career. They would have done a session or when I say a session, a period of time or a year or two as a training consultant where they lead a group or a classroom of people, and they're obviously trained in facilitation, they're trained in the various parts of the leadership courses, and they lead a group of managers through their own experience, through the curriculum that's professionally written. And we take a lot of, you can imagine from a McDonald's global point of view, we take a lot of syllabus and content that's consistent around the world, translated for the 100 different languages or the 100 different markets and all the different languages. But we take a lot of that content, we use it, and we also make sure that it's local and relevant to the Aussie business. For example, in our training centres, one of the things we put in, which is a unique McDonald's thing from around the world, is we've got a barista academy because of the importance of our McCafe business in our restaurants. We've got barista academies in all of our training centres around Australia as well, which really reflects, I guess, Aussie customers' love of what we would say is proper coffee barista made. We needed to, I guess, adjust our training program, adjust our way of lifting our people and letting them really deliver what Aussie customers want. And so it's just a good example of, we take the HU or the Hamburg University syllabus and content, we make it really relevant for Australia, and that's what we try and help and teach our managers as they go through the different courses.
Fantastic. So Andrew, global store numbers, so restaurant numbers, 40,000?
Yeah, roughly,
right?
I'd say 40,000 is the best number. Yeah, 39 something, yep.
Yeah, so nearly 40,000 restaurants, 100 markets?
It's 120 different countries, and it's everywhere from Australia to the US. We have restaurants in New Caledonia. We have restaurants in small countries as well. But yeah, over 120 different markets around the world.
Yeah. So for our listeners, when you think about the scale of the operation, sales in Australia in the multi-billions, growing at above 10%. Consistently for a long time. It's a financial powerhouse, and it's always been one of the stocks I've mentioned to my friends, not clients, on a licensed basis. But if you're looking to buy some your kids are sharing a decent business, well, there it is. Everyone can own a bit of it. Now, there was a couple of random questions I wanted to ask you, which is, when you were in Japan, Andrew, Den Fujita, was he alive or dead, involved in the business, or had it been sold at that point by the family, or did you have anything to do with him? He's a legendary figure in accounting history and in Japanese business.
Yeah, so Fujita-san, he left the business formally, informally in the early 2000s, I think. And I joined McDonald's Japan in 2010. So he was gone from McDonald's in Japan, and actually, McDonald's in Japan is an interesting structure. It's listed on the Japanese stock exchange. The corporation owns some of it, but the mum and dad investors in Japan own more than half of that business, and it's been a really successful business.
Yeah, it's a great story. So I in my strange Maccas background, my dad did the early post-mix machines. I worked in an accounting firm that did the Fujita Australian interests, and you know, so there's a long and interesting background. Now, of course, the McDonald's brand is incredibly famous. I think everyone knows the Golden Arches. They know Ronald, and I think understand that it's a you know, it's a brand that brings really great joy to people. How have you, you know, over time kept the brand so relevant as food tastes change and community standards around different types of eating and whatnot have changed? The business has done a tremendous job of keeping the brand relevant. How do you think about brand at McDonald's?
I think the underlying premise, especially in Australia at McDonald's, is something, the way that we try to position the brand is that we're coming up to our 50th birthday, so there's a bit of reflection on what we've done and where we've been as a brand. But we think one of our most successful achievements from my predecessors over a very long period of time is that we've made McDonald's, which is this global business and this global brand, we've made McDonald's part of Australia in a good way, and we've even earned the nickname of Maccas. And I think it represents that people in Australia believe either consciously or subconsciously around McDonald's having, through the 1,000 local restaurants operated by franchisees, the commitment to basically 95% of what we sell is produced by Aussie farmers and sold in Australia. Whether it's we made coffee, barista made coffee, not the brewed coffee from America. I think we've done a really good job of becoming a business that undeniably is a global McDonald's brand, but is absolutely part of the part of the Australian economy, part of the Australian neighbourhood in our local restaurants, and a really good contributor to society and community overall, even through Ronald McDonald House children's charities, which we're really proud of, the association and the connection we have there. I think that's the way that we've tried and worked incredibly hard to make the brand relevant for Australians. And over different points, whether it's coffee, whether it's using Angus beef from Aussie farmers, there's so many different examples over a period of time where we've adjusted and listened to our customers to make us relevant in this country. What I would say though, the more and more things that change, the more and more our customers continue to buy Big Macs and French fries and bacon and egg McMuffins, and how much the core menu that we have, what really is truly representative of us, quarter pounders and Big Macs, remains still the vast majority of our business, and we're proud of that as well.
Yeah, it's funny. So when it's one of the points I've picked up over time is I think there's at least 4 McDonald's menu brands that are multi-billion-dollar businesses in their own right, and I think they're Big Macs, French fries, nuggets, and not sure what the fourth one is.
Quarter pounders. There'll be quarter pounders, or fillet of fish is a significant brand around the world. Not as big in Australia probably, but it's significant.
But they're multi-billion-dollar sales brands in their own right, and I think you know, that's probably not you know, not always that well known from people not close to business. Last couple of things I wanted to ask you about the business before we wrap up was I'll come to Ronald McDonald House, but just before that, you know, I think some of the headline stats are that, for example, in Japan, more than 25% of orders to McDonald's restaurants go through the digital platform, that the business is I think got the second largest number of digital customers in the world behind Amazon. And that really, one way from a business model point of view to think of McDonald's is that it is a platform for a global platform for serving food that's clean and safe, and that increasingly there's been the digital connectivity of that physical platform to where the customer lives, which is increasingly in their mobile phone. How, you're big into Uber, you're big into mobile delivery. How have you viewed the digital piece? And I guess, Andrew, there's a great book that we make all our people at Kelly+Partners read called Good to Great. And it's sort of sixth part of a transformation of a business is technology as an enabler rather than as a silver bullet. You guys have done that incredibly well. How are you going with your app and the sort of the digital experience for customers in Australia and globally?
It is a focus for us. It's an interesting challenge for a business that is so bricks and mortar, even in today's terms, but also in people's memories of McDonald's as a customer. Your first birthday party that you had at Maccas a long time ago. The first time you went through drive-through with your parents. So we serve 2 million customers a day in Australia, and as a result, that's an enormous amount of people already engaging in our business before we even start thinking or talking about the digital platforms that we have. So we've done a number of things over recent years to enable our customers to use technology. It's given us a lot of challenge in our restaurants around how we serve those customers. If you think about, if I can illustrate for a second, a really interesting challenge we have now. We used to have our point of sale registers on the front counter, and we had one register in drive-through, and so you had a maximum amount of 3 or 4 orders coming into the kitchen at any one time. Now, with the digital platforms, you've got effectively an unlimited amount of orders potentially coming into the restaurant at any one time, and it's a great challenge. Exactly, it's a great challenge to have, but it's a challenge for us as a business, and I think we are one of those businesses that's quite uniquely positioned to build off a strength of the physical customers that come into our business. As I said, just in Australia, 2 million people a day, and to use technology not as the overriding solution, but as leveraging those 2 million people to help them use technology over the course of their normal life. And so using technology, as you know, on your phone or whether you delivery at home, it allows you so much more flexibility in how you engage. And we are working hard to make sure that, I think, the essence of the brand that comes through when you walk into a McDonald's restaurant and you get that feeling and people are serving you and they're smiling. One of our challenges is to make sure that we can replicate that on the digital platforms that we offer as well. And we're working hard to make sure the brand stays strong through all of those different ways that customers engage with us.
Yeah, very, very cool. And finally, Andrew, Ronald McDonald House is a very, very significant commitment from the franchisees and the system to build these houses for patient care next to major hospitals all across Australia. How big now is that charity? And you guys must be obviously terribly proud of the contribution that it makes.
Yeah, I think it's one thing we talk about sometimes, not all the time, and it's a really important part of our system and who we are. And you mentioned the franchisees. Not only do they raise money, I've known through a number of different houses, the franchisees have literally physically built some of these houses themselves over periods of time, and the commitment of, and it works brilliantly with our business because it's a local Ronald McDonald House next to a hospital in a local town or a city, and also it serves, or the main customer or the main families that use Ronald McDonald Houses are usually from the country towns where they've had to, unfortunately, because their child has been seriously ill, they've had to go and get treatment at a city hospital. And so we call these houses or the chapters a home away from home. It's the point where, the families are at their most vulnerable, probably the worst moment of their life when their kid is sick. and needs treatment, the RMHC is the place they come to get a bit of love and affection and care. And the financial benefit to the families is significant as well. We served or helped over 36,000 families last year across the different houses around the country. They saved each of them almost thousands of dollars because the accommodation costs are looked after. They are looked after from access to food and support. It's also a really great way that the social welfare support from government is funneled through as well. And it just creates a better environment. I'll never say it's a better environment than what otherwise would be, because as you know, the families are at that point, the worst moment of their situation. And so we're really proud of the work they do. There's another part of RMHC we don't talk about enough, is called the Ronald McDonald House Learning Program, which actually helps the kids that have been in hospital for a long time. And we provide tutors so that the kids can catch up on their schooling that they would have missed because they were in hospital for a long time. And that's a crucial part of some young people's development as they go through their life if they've had a serious illness. So the franchisees do a brilliant job. Our suppliers, their commitment as well is significant, and all the volunteers and the chapters, we couldn't speak more highly of all their contributions to helping those families.
Fantastic. Really, really great story. So Andrew, to finish up, you're married, you've got some kids. How do you balance, a huge job with family and the challenges that brings? I always say that the work's easy, raising kids. Now there's a challenge. How do you keep all that rolling along? Look after your health and make time for your friends.
I think I've got two teenagers and my wife as well who don't think I'm the boss and I'm not the boss. So it's a good thing that you have a family, I think, because it keeps you significantly not the boss when you're at home. I think also I've got a good group of close friends that don't allow me, or they don't even think about me doing a job like this. And so I think just keeping that balance, and also I think at work having different people who have different backgrounds and experience and skills is really important as well. So we deliberately try in our leadership team to make sure that we don't just have people like me who have been in McDonald's for their whole career, that we deliberately bring in external functional people as well, people who have had different experiences in leadership, that really make sure we balance out and get different thinking through our business. As much as we value the Maccas experience, we know as a business we need to continue to change and be challenged as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, for all the people that listen to the podcast today, I hope you've found it interesting. I want to give Andrew a big rap. He's a very nice person and obviously very capable at what he's doing. I've really enjoyed the interactions I've had with him and obviously the Maccas system. And it's an incredible thrill to have him join us today and share his insights and to make time for us in what is no doubt an overwhelmingly busy career. So Andrew, thanks so much. And as I love to say to all of our guests, have a great day.
Thank you. Cheers, Brett.